The one-day summit set goals to halt losses of tropical forests by 2030, improve food production and hike the share of electric vehicles in cities to 30% of new vehicle sales by 2030. UN Secretary-General Ban Ki-moon called it a historic day.
A new coalition of governments, business, finance, multilateral development banks and civil society leaders announced their commitment to mobilize upwards of $200 billion for financing low-carbon and climate-resilient development.
The targets are meant to help prepare a 200-nation summit in Paris in late 2015 to finalize a deal to slow rising greenhouse gas emissions. Until now, work has been slow, with many countries more focused on improving economic growth and creating jobs. Governments and investors said they would raise more than $200 billion in climate financing by the end of 2015, including $30 billion in green bonds by commercial banks and $100 billion from a group of development banks. Peruvian President Ollanta Humala, whose country is hosting the COP20 climate change conference in Lima in December, was optimistic.
Nuestra esperanza es que la conferencia de Lima.
And our hope is that the Lima conference will begin to build the greatest alliance in history for climate and development. That alliance must make it possible by 2020 for us to sign a new climate agreement which recognizes historic and differentiated responsibilities of our countries, which allow for economic growth and combating economic inequality and poverty.
Que permite el crecimiento económico y la lucha contra la desigualdad y la pobreza.
Kenyan President Uhuru Kenyatta, who's among 125 leaders attending the New York summit, also warned that developed countries must take the lead in reduction of carbon emissions.
Developed countries must take the lead in emission cuts in accordance with the principle of common but differentiated responsibilities and respective capabilities. This is an imperative for a post-2015 climate change regime.
Separately, an alliance of about 30 countries, including the United States, and a coalition of multinational companies set a goal of halving losses of forests by 2020 and halting the losses by 2030. If fully implemented, this would stave off between 4.5 billion and 8.8 billion tons of carbon dioxide emissions a year, equivalent to emissions by all the world's 1 billion cars. Speaking on behalf of the Elders, a group of independent global leaders working for peace and human rights, Graça Machel, the widow of Nelson Mandela, called on the world leaders to show courage in combating climate change.
As political leaders and captains of industries, as individuals, we have no longer a choice. We simply have an obligation. And you, our leaders, you must have the courage. You must have the courage to make decisions that will make you unpopular for some thousands of your citizens, but will protect us, the billions of people, and will protect the future of our planet and the future of our grandchildren.
The declaration is backed by more than $1 billion from countries including Britain, Germany and Norway. Among the initiatives to curb the use of fossil fuel, one project would be to raise the share of renewable energy used in power generation in 19 countries in Eastern and Southern Africa to 40% by 2030 from 10%. Noel Makugu, CCTV.